Part 4, Article 17, Indigenous Family. 1. The family is a natural and fundamental group unit of society. Indigenous peoples have the right to preserve, maintain, and promote their own family systems. Capital S states shall recognize, respect, and protect the various indigenous forms of family, in particular the extended family, as well as the forms of matrimonial union, filiations, descent, and family name. In all cases, gender and generational equity shall be recognized and respected. That's why I reserve the right for my family to be protected and not to be abused. And we should be able to see each other when we want to, and the de facto shall not have the right to separate us, nor injure us. And I will speak up against it. 2. In matters relating to custody, adoption, severance of family ties, and related matters, the best interest of the child shall be primary consideration. In determining the best interest of the child, courts and other relevant institutions shall take into account the right of every indigenous child in community with member of his or her people to enjoy his or her own culture, to profess and practice his or her own religion, and to use his or her own language. In that regard shall look to the indigenous law of the peoples concerned, and shall consider their points of view, rights, and interests, including the positions of individuals, the family, and the community. Let's see, Article 18, Health. 1. Indigenous people. Let me see where I left off. Okay. Look at the time. Health. Indigenous people have the collective and individual right to enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of physical, mental, and spiritual health. 2. Indigenous people have the right to their own health system. And let me throw this out here. They have this thing called targeted individuals, where the dark, they call it the deep state, or the hidden hand, or whatever it is going on, those who dwell in the shadows that's doing this evil. You're violating everything that I'm reading here. It says indigenous people have the collective and individual right to enjoyment of the highest attainable standard. This is for those who call themselves targeted individuals and that are being harassed and injured and secretly on the hit list or whatever that they're doing. And this is not me imagining things. This is really happening, and it's actually documented that it's going on. So you're violating all these indigenous people, and this is you should stop. You should cease and desist this action immediately. Those who are involved and behind this. Because justice, we're putting this out there in the universe, so justice is going to answer to this. Justice will answer. Okay, indigenous people have the collective and individual right to the enjoyment. This is Article 18. Indigenous people have the collective and individual right to enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of physical, mental, and spiritual health. 2. Indigenous people have the right to their own health systems, practices, as well as to the use and protection of the plants, animals, minerals of vital interest, and other natural resources for medicinal use in their ancestral lands and territories. So this right here, I'm just saying, it appears, I don't do it, but it appears you can use the plants and minerals for medicinal use. So take that out. But let's see. 3. States shall take measures to prevent and prohibit indigenous people and States shall take measures to prevent and prohibit indigenous people and individuals from being subject to research programs. See, targeted individuals, you in violation. You people that's doing this to the targeted individuals, you in violations. States shall take measure, I'm holding you accountable, states, capital S, states, shall take measures to prevent and prohibit indigenous peoples and indigenous individuals from being subject to research programs, biological or medical experimentation, as well as sterilization without their prior free and informed consent. Likewise, indigenous peoples and persons have the right, as appropriate, to access their data, medical records, and documentations of research conducted by individuals in public and private institutions. I'm going to put this out there in the universe. I went to Kaiser a few years back before I found out about all this stuff that's going on. And I don't take flu shots and things like that. So they know that. So I went, and I'm speaking to this, and this is a lady that's indigenous that works for them. I don't know her name. I'm just putting it out there so that she would repent, because she know what she did. I tell them I don't want a shot. So she came here while I'm sitting there, pulled out a needle, stuck it in my arm, and gave me a shot. Without my permission. So I'm just saying this because you know you did it. And you know who you are. Repent. Because you're going to, when this thing comes down and when justice shows up, repent. Because you know you did it. All right, let's see here. Three, states, capital states, shall take measures to prevent and prohibit indigenous peoples and individuals from being subject to research programs, biological or medical experimentations, as well as sterilization without their prior free and informed consent. Likewise, indigenous peoples and persons have the right, as appropriate, to access their data, medical records, and documentation of research conducted by individuals and public and private institutions. 4. Indigenous peoples have the right to use, without any discrimination whatsoever, all the health and medical care institutions and services accessible to the general population. States, capital states, in consultation and coordination with indigenous peoples, shall promote intercultural systems or practices in medical and health services provided to indigenous communities, including training of indigenous technical and professional health care personnel. 5. States shall guarantee the effective exercise of the rights contained in this article. Article, let's see here, 19. Right to protection of a healthy environment. 1. Indigenous people have the right to live in harmony with nature and to a healthy, safe, and sustainable environment, essential conditions for the full enjoyment of the right to life, to their spirituality, worldview, and to collective well-being. 2. Indigenous peoples have the right to conserve, restore, and protect the environment and to manage their lands, territories, and resources in a sustainable way. 3. Indigenous people are entitled to be protected against the introduction of, abandonment, dispersion, transit, indiscriminate use, or deposit of any harmful substance that could negatively affect indigenous communities, lands, territories, and resources. 4. Indigenous people have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. Capital states shall establish and implement assistance programs for indigenous peoples for such conservation and protection without discrimination. Okay, let's see. Section 4, Organizational and Political Rights. Article 20, Rights of Association, Assembly, and Freedom of Expression and Thought. 1. Indigenous people have the right of association, assembly, organization, and expression, and to exercise them without interference and in accordance with their worldview, inter alia, values, usage, customs, ancestral traditions, beliefs, spirituality, and other cultural practices. 2. Indigenous people have the right to assemble on their sacred and ceremonial sites and areas for this purpose. They shall have free access and use to these sites and areas. 3. Indigenous people, in particular those who are divided by international borders, shall have the right to travel and to maintain and develop contacts, relations, and direct cooperation, including activities for spiritual, cultural, political, economic, and social purposes with their members and other people. So we have the right to travel. We don't need licenses. 4. These states, these lowercase states, shall adopt in consultation and cooperation with the indigenous peoples effective measures to ensure the exercise and application of these rights. Move on to the next video.